How can you never hear about? I mean, I'm saying both of these stories, are rooted in fiction. A Time to Kill and The Color Purple. Like, black women are so quick to go up there and want to talk about Danny Glover. You're black, you're ugly, and saying that to Whoopi Goldberg. But then in The Time to Kill, here you have Samuel L. Jackson's character whose daughter gets, and he waits in a locker when they're at their arraignment, hops out the locker and guns them down with an M16.
Shout out to Sergeant Willie Pete, the voice you heard in the beginning of this video, making an argument for why don't people really celebrate A Time to Kill, where the father sacrificed himself for the honor of his daughter who was violated, as opposed to the movie that we always hear about, which is The Color Purple. But he's responding here to a stream that I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment.
I'm watching Dr. T. Hassan's video about buckbreaking in a matriarchal household, looks like, or it should say what buckbreaking looks like in a matriarchal household. I had to blow the screen up because I was like, let me read this. It has like the 10 commandments of buckbreaking when it comes to black boys.
I want you to tell us not only what the topic is, but what made you decide to post on it.
I was doing some research, and I was thinking about that particular subject. I was thinking earlier this week, like, why is it that it seems that like the girls were able to progress so fast, and yet you see boys in school, how they progress, it's often delayed. We see that there's a propensity to give them greater levels of punishment, and I was wondering if that was found also in the home.
As it is Black History Month, it's only fitting to remember the history from which we come. And I thank the Lord every day that I grew up in the home that I did, because I'm equated with a normal that is quite healthy for a family. But unfortunately, for many black men, our normal is very abnormal, and you're hearing it discussed here.
I thought about that. I said, in a matriarchal household, what would that concept look like? Because something I was reading about is that before whatever act of violation took place, there was a flogging of the slave. And one thing I thought about was, the types of punishments that occur, that the types of punishments that are meted out for boys versus girls. And when it comes to boys, the type of punishment that's rendered is almost always a castigatory in nature, whether it's corporal punishment, whatever the case may be. There's not really an explanation for why. It's because I said so, that's why, right?
Shout out to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. This is a stream that he did connecting some of the similarities between the slavery practice of buckbreaking and how many young men are reared in matriarchal households, and some of the data that he collected was quite alarming.
In terms of the disciplinary treatment of boys, one of the things you can see here on this breakdown is that it's actually black male victims of child abuse fatalities to the greatest degree, 1,800 black male victims versus 1,300 black female victims. And when you look at the perpetrators, it is 1,692 male perpetrators. It's 2,106 female perpetrators, which is understandable because women are generally the child providers. And the most prominent form of abuse is neglect. But in terms of child abuse fatality, it can be anything from neglect leading to, diminished health to the point of death, or it can be a physical beating or anything else like it, So these are the kind of things we're looking at. So your first point lines up very much with what we see in the data in regard to child, abuse fatality. I just wanted to point that out. You are definitely on track with this.
You hear the mention of the first point of the 10, and what's striking, especially for someone that comes from a healthy home, is all of the points reiterate points that I've heard either secondhand or on a lighter scale experiencing the black male experience in public. And you're going to hear Sergeant Willie Pete go through the list for us.
So let me read through them, because I think it would make a decent video just for me to just list off the 10 reasons. Male defiance at a young age is punished with swift violence. The solution to boys' behavior is always castigation. 2, female defiance is rewarded, applauded, thought to be adorable. The solution is incentivizing the right behavior. And then here's 3 by Dominique. The female child or children are empowered academically, connected with other leading women and invested in, while the male child is left to play a sport or kept away from men. Here's number 4, Dominique again. The male child becomes the surrogate husband for his mother and sister. He is also Mr. Goodbar for his aunt and grandmother. Hence where all of his protect black women shtick comes from, as they put that in his head to go for other black men, but be submissive to non-black men.
I'll read off number 5 from Dominic. It reads, the female child is taught to avoid marriage unless it's a wealthy man or a non-black man, while the male child is told to never bring home a non-black woman.
A curious person might ask, how is he trying to tie the themes of black men going overseas with the buck-breaking idea in slavery and the way that black men are reared as young men? And in this particular part of the stream, you hear how it gets tied together.
The relationship between, who you marry and how you're raised as a child shows exactly that relationship between what buck-breaking in a matriarchal household looks like. Right. Where as a man, you don't really have that autonomy. That shows that type of training. Again, there's the controlling strategy. This is a controlling strategy. Right. I remember constantly being told, but and other black men that were being told that, either directly or indirectly, that if you're not bringing home a black woman, there's a problem. Right. If not directly by your mother, then by aunts and even uncles, but aunts and cousins. They're like, what's wrong with you? Yeah, they'll make arguments like, you got all these black women out here and you chose such and such, right? But when it comes to a black woman, that's not the same dynamic, because they use, when they're raising them, right, particularly between the ages of 0 to 14, they use typically autonomy supporting strategies. So you're reasserting her autonomy, right? Her innate ability to choose, right? So they don't tell her that she can't choose something, because that goes against the way that they train their daughters. But their sons are trained in a controlled manner, and or to be controlled. And so this is part of how they're buck broken. So you get black men who will vehemently oppose dating women outside of the particular ethnic group, simply because that's how they've been raised, and not for any perceived benefits or anything of that nature. And that's how you end up with the situation that we're in today.
Here's 6. This is from Dennis. When the male child is of age to seriously date and marry, he shall be advised by his female relatives not to date according to his own preferences. It will be suggested that he dates one of their friends, daughter, or niece who is already a struggling single mother, overweight, or rode the cock carousel since the last time the Falcons were good.
One of the things I think about that this point, especially in relation to it all goes toward that central theme of buck breaking in a matriarchal household, because
number 7. The female child is encouraged to be masculine and do for self, while the male child is encouraged to be feminine and wait for a leader, namely a woman.
Generally speaking, the whole purpose behind buckbreaking is that you had a defiance, right? There's that male who was standing up, like, you know what, I'm not taking this, right? And the whole point of the buckbreaking is like, no, we're gonna break you and make you submit to this.
Dominique again with number 8. When the male child is a scholar, he is mocked and ridiculed, saying he needs to focus on helping the women pay the bills and rear children, while the female is encouraged to study and learn.
And so when black men basically go against that matriarchal programming, even by nature, saying, hey, you know what, I'm not really attracted to this 600-pound chick, and they go against you, it's like, wait a second, weren't you trained properly? Weren't you buck broken in the home? Right?
This is Dennis with number 9. The male child shall not be given any information about women's true nature in the dating realm. In fact, anyone who attempts to advise a man of such information will be immediately expelled from their social circle.
When Marcus talks about the husband's sons, it's like, she's like, I'm trained to be the boss. He's supposed to submit.
Gavin with number 10. The male child is taught to be a gentleman and hold the door open for any female. Should she not say thank you, he's taught that he's to be the mature one and overlook the lack of courtesy, appreciation, and respect.
And those guys appear. Why do those guys appear? Because they've been buckbroken at the home. They've been disciplined in the home. These controlling strategies have been used in the home, and so when they get sent out or released into the world, well, they're taught to submit to females, right?
And I wanted to ask a serious question because, you know, I noticed that a lot of black women over the years have had like this very strong sense of entitlement when it comes to black men, like this attitude that they are owed.
I had an experience.
Marcus.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had experience just recently. Well, not recently, but a few years back. Oh wow.
Thou art not, sir. I just want to say that.
Much, bro.
Jesus.
Okay.
Jesus, yeah, after 60, it is Jesus.
One thing I like to talk about in my videos is that for black men making the transition to being overseas is that we have been raised in an environment where it's almost counter to what masculinity is in most other parts of the world. And we have to exercise those muscles, so to speak. Things that are normal in the black community just simply aren't normal in other places. And in this point here, Sergeant Willie Pete is going to make an excellent point about not necessarily the way that we function, but the environment that we are reared in and how we're trained to function.
Anything that was not done, especially all the negatives, that's the funny part. Anything that was not done, you know, black men must wear the scarlet letter of it, but all the positives only apply individually to whatever individual black man, and we must make them, you know, the extreme minority. They cannot be the majority, right? It's almost the same thing that white supremacy does. And you know what was funny about when I posted that, you know, talking about you have to determine for yourself when you decide that you want to break the rules. And I had that image of A Time to Kill. You know, that movie came out maybe what, like early 90s, right? And before that, it was The Color Purple. And I'm saying, and it kind of like made me think to myself, I'm like, how come you never hear about A Time to Kill? You know, how come you never hear about...
The point I like that Sergeant Willie Pete is making is that once this movie had its initial fanfare and went through the initial press phase and people talking about it, it just kind of faded away. But The Color Purple did not. And it is emblematic of the kind of environment that black men are raised in. Now, I'm not saying that it's not difficult for black women. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that for black men in our unique experience, we have to understand that we're used to things that are simply not going to be very conducive to how we're going to live overseas. So we might seek something that's familiar. And what's familiar to us might just be quite simply dysfunctional. For guys going overseas, especially those that were reared in single mother households, you'll need to take some time to do the work to look at yourself and understand just exactly how you were raised and how different it was from men overseas so that you can perform in a more manly, if dare I say, patriarchal manner and satisfy the wife that you're looking for. Because this is some inner work that guys really need to consider, considering the environment that many of us were reared and unfortunately others buckbroken in were. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, guys.